I packed my good coat, the gray wool one with the big buttons that my husband Gerald bought me for our anniversary 32 years ago now. I hadn't worn it in almost 2 years, but I pressed it the night before, hung it on the back of the bedroom door, and told myself, this is worth pressing for. My daughter had called on a Tuesday evening in early October. I was making tea, the kind of quiet Tuesday where nothing happens and you don't expect anything to. The phone lit up and I saw her name Sandra, and I remember thinking how long it had been since she'd called just to call. Usually it was a text, a short one. "Mom," she said, and her voice had that warm, rounded quality it gets when she's happy. "You're turning 68 next month. We want to do something special. Come out to Vancouver. Stay with us. We'll celebrate properly dinner, maybe a day trip out to Whistler if the weather holds." Marcus is excited too. Marcus is her husband. They've been married 9 years. They live in a nice neighborhood in East Vancouver, near Commercial Drive. I visited twice, once when they moved in, and once when their daughter, my granddaughter Lily, was born. Lily is 5 now. I live in Thunder Bay. That's a 4.5-hour flight with a connection in Toronto. "Are you sure?" I said. "I don't want to impose." "Mom, you're not imposing. You're my mother. We want you there." I stood in my kitchen with the kettle just starting to whistle, and I felt something loosen in my chest, something I hadn't realized had been tight. "Okay," I said. "I'll come." I booked the flights the next morning. Return ticket Thunder Bay to Toronto, Toronto to Vancouver. I used my air miles, which I've been collecting for 11 years and almost never spend. I booked a window seat both ways because I wanted to see the mountains coming in. I told myself that was a good use of the points, that this was exactly what they were for. I called Sandra back to confirm the dates. "Perfect," she said. "Don't worry about anything. We'll pick you up from the airport. Marcus will come. Lily's been asking about you. She wants to show you her new room." I wrote the flight details on a notepad by the phone. November 14th, arriving YVR at 4:20 inches the afternoon. I circled the date. Over the next 4 weeks, I thought about that trip more than I probably should have. I bought a small toy for Lily, one of those art kits with the washable markers, because I remembered she liked drawing. I bought a bottle of BC Pinot Noir from the LCBO for Marcus, because I'd heard he was getting into wine and I thought that was a thoughtful thing to bring. I also baked a tin of shortbread and vacuum sealed it, because Sandra used to eat it by the fireplace when she was small, and I thought maybe she still liked it. I didn't tell many people I was going, just my neighbor Ruth and my friend Diane from my book club. Diane said, "That's wonderful, Beverly. You deserve a trip." Ruth said she'd keep an eye on my mail. I wore the gray coat to the airport. The flight to Toronto was fine. I had a layover of 2 hours. I bought a coffee and a magazine I didn't really read. The flight to Vancouver departed on time. I did get the window seat. And yes, coming into Vancouver, I saw the mountains. Snow on the peaks already. The city spread out below with the ocean at the edges. I remember pressing my hand against the cold window glass and thinking, she was right. This is special. We touched down at 4:17, 3 minutes early. I texted Sandra from the gate. "Just landed. On my way to baggage claim. So excited to see you all." The little dots appeared, then stopped. I figured she was driving. You shouldn't text and drive. I collected my suitcase, the small navy one, and walked out through the arrivals doors into the main terminal. I stood near the pillar where arrivals usually meet people, the way I'd done the other 2 times I'd visited, and Marcus had been standing right there with a Tim Hortons cup and a cardboard sign that said "Mom" in big letters, which had made me laugh. The pillar was just a pillar this time. I checked my phone. No reply to my text. I waited 10 minutes. I called. It rang through to voicemail. Sandra's voice, cheerful. "You've reached Sandra. Leave a message." "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. I'm here. I'm in arrivals, by the main doors. Just give me a call when you're close. No rush." I found a seat near the windows. I put my suitcase between my feet and my carry-on on my lap, and I watched the doors. Families coming through, couples, a group of young people with ski bags. An older man carrying flowers, everyone finding someone. I called again at 4:45. Voicemail. I tried Marcus. His phone rang 7 times and went to voicemail as well. I sat there and I told myself, there's a simple explanation. Traffic on the Trans, Canada. An accident on the Granville Bridge. She forgot her phone at home. These things happen. Asterisk, I told myself all of those things in a very calm, reasonable voice inside my head, while my hands were folded in my lap, and my good gray coat was still buttoned up because I hadn't wanted to unwrap myself yet. At 5:15, almost an hour after landing, I called again. This time she picked up. Mom. Her voice was different. Not the warm, rounded voice from October. Flatter. Slightly impatient. Sandra, I'm at the airport. I've been here almost an hour. A pause. Then, oh, right. Mom, I'm so sorry today, just completely got away from me. We're at a thing. A dinner. For Marcus's work. It was sort of last minute. I didn't say anything for a moment. I can come get you in 2 hours? Maybe 2.5? 2.5 hours. I was 67 years old, 68 in 4 days, sitting on a hard plastic chair at Vancouver International Airport with a tin of shortbread in my carry-on bag and a bottle of wine I'd brought as a gift. It's fine, I said. I'll figure it out. Mom, I'm really sorry. It just slipped through. It's fine, Sandra. Enjoy your dinner. I hung up. I sat with the phone in my lap for a little while. The arrival's doors kept opening and closing. A family near me was doing a big reunion. Grandmother, grandchildren, everyone talking at once, one of the grandkids already wrapped around the grandmother's leg. I looked away. I thought about calling Ruth. Or Diane. But I didn't want to say the words out loud yet. Instead, I opened my phone and I booked myself a hotel. The Fairmont at the airport expensive. Yes, more than I would normally spend. But I was 67 and tired. And I was not going to sit in this chair for 2.5 hours. And I was not going to take a cab to a daughter who had forgotten I was coming. I had a small savings account that Gerald's life insurance had left me. I had never touched the main part of it. That night I decided some of it was for this, for a room with a clean bed and a window and room service if I wanted it. I checked in just before 6. The woman at the desk, young, with very kind eyes, asked if I was checking in for a conference. No, I said. I'm visiting family. She gave me a room on the 8th floor. It faced the mountains. I sat on the edge of the bed in my gray coat, and I looked at the mountains going dark in the evening light, and I let myself feel it. The way you have to, eventually. The embarrassment of it. The specific loneliness of being forgotten by your own child. The shortbread in my bag. The wine I had carried across 4.5 hours of flight for a man who was at a work dinner and hadn't thought to mention it to his mother-in-law. I ordered soup from room service and ate it at the small desk by the window. Sandra texted at 8:30. Are you okay? Where are you staying? I told her the name of the hotel. I said I was fine and getting some rest and we could talk tomorrow. She replied, Okay, sorry again. Tomorrow will be better. I didn't reply to that. I slept better than I expected. Sometimes the body just decides it's had enough and takes what it needs. In the morning I ordered coffee and a muffin and sat again at the window. The mountains were clear, snow right down to the tree line. I thought about the day trip to Whistler Sandra had mentioned. The dinner, Lily showing me her new room. I thought about how I had circled November 14th on the notepad. At 9, Sandra called. Mom, good morning. I really am sorry about last night. Marcus feels terrible too. We want to make it right. Can we come get you this morning, take you for brunch? Something in me had shifted overnight. Not dramatically, not like a door slamming, more like a window closing quietly. Sandra, I said, can I ask you something? Of course. Did Marcus know I was coming? Before last night, I mean. Silence. A particular kind of silence, the kind that answers the question before any words do. I had told him, she said carefully. With everything going on with his work project, I might not have. It wasn't on the family calendar. It wasn't on the family calendar. I had pressed my good coat. I had saved my air miles for 11 years. I had baked shortbread and bought wine and chosen a window seat so I could see the mountains coming in, and I was not on the family calendar. I see, I said. Mom, I think I'm going to spend a couple of days on my own, sweetheart. I haven't been to Vancouver in a few years. I might go see some things. But we want to celebrate your birthday. I know, and that means a lot, but I think I need a little time. She started to say something else, and I said, gently but clearly, I'll call you before I fly home. I promise. And I hung up. I stayed in the hotel one more night, which was more than I should have spent. And then, because I have always been practical, even when I'm hurt, I looked for something cheaper closer to downtown. I found a small inn on Granville Island, the kind of place with a shared common room and a breakfast that's included in the rate. Not fancy, but it had a water view, and it was less than half the price. I checked in on the afternoon of my birthday. The woman who ran the inn was named Patricia. She was about 70, with short white hair and the unhurried manner of someone who has stopped trying to impress anyone. When she handed me my key, she noticed the date on my ID and said, "Oh, happy birthday. 68 today," I said. She smiled. "I was 68 2 years ago. It's a good age. Come have a glass of wine with me tonight if you feel like company. No obligation." I almost said no. I almost said I was tired, which would have been a small lie. "That would be lovely," I said instead. Patricia had a small sitting room off the kitchen, with 2 deep chairs and a wood stove that she had going by the time I came down at 7. She'd opened a bottle of Okanagan Red, a small BC winery, she said, run by a woman she'd known for 30 years. She poured 2 glasses and we sat and I told her a bit of it. Not all of it. Enough. She listened without interrupting, which is rarer than people think. When I finished, she said, "My son did something similar once. Not the airport, but the same shape of thing. You show up and they fit you in somewhere between the real parts of their lives." "Yes," I said. "That's exactly it. Between the real parts. What did you do?" I stopped fitting myself in. It took longer than it should have. We sat with that for a minute. The wood stove ticked. "Are you going to see her before you go?" Patricia asked. "I don't know yet. I did see Sandra. On my 3rd day, I called her and we met for coffee near her neighborhood neutral ground, a cafe neither of us had been to before. She came alone, without Marcus, without Lily. She looked tired, and she'd clearly been anxious about it, the way her hands kept moving around her mug. She apologized again. A longer apology this time, more specific. She said the dinner had been planned for weeks, but she'd convinced herself she could manage both. She said she hadn't confirmed it with Marcus, because she'd kept thinking she would tell him and then didn't. She said she knew that wasn't good enough. I listened to all of it. "Sandra," I said, "I'm not angry. I want to be clear about that. I'm not angry." She looked almost more worried when I said that. "But I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it properly." I wrapped both hands around my coffee. I flew 4.5 hours. I used 11 years of air miles. I packed my good coat, and I was not on the family calendar. I paused. "That's not a mistake. That's a habit, and I think we both know it is." She didn't argue. That was the thing, she didn't argue, which meant she knew I was right. "I love you," I said. "I love Lily. I want to be part of your life, but I'm not going to press myself thin to fit into a space that keeps shrinking. I'm 68 years old. I'm not going to do that." Her eyes filled up. "I know, Mom. I know." "Good," I said. And I meant it simply, not as a punishment, just as a fact now spoken out loud. We hugged outside the cafe. A long one. She said she'd call more. I said I'd like that, and I meant that too. Whether it happens is something only time will tell. But I said it, and I meant it, and that felt like the honest version of hope. I did see Lily. Sandra brought her by the inn the next morning, which was the day before I flew home. Lily is small and serious, with Sandra's same dark eyes. She showed me a drawing she'd done, apparently. She'd heard Grandma was in Vancouver and had made me a picture of what she thought I looked like. It was a large purple oval, with a small face and 2 long lines for arms. "That's you, Grandma," she said very seriously. "It's wonderful," I said. And I meant that completely. I rolled it up and carried it in my carry-on all the way home to Thunder Bay. It's on my refrigerator now, held up with a magnet shaped like a maple leaf. The night before I flew home, Patricia made tea in the sitting room again. It was later than the last time, nearly 9, and the wood stove had gone down to just embers. She asked how the coffee with Sandra had gone. "It went," I said, "which is better than I expected and less than I hoped for, which is probably about right." Patricia smiled. "That's honest." "I'm trying to be more honest," I said, "mostly with myself." She raised her mug slightly, the way you do when something strikes you as true. We sat in the quiet for a while. Outside the water was dark, and the North Shore lights were coming in across the inlet, small and scattered and pretty. I thought about the notepad at home with November 14th circled on it. I thought about how the circle had felt like an invitation, and how it had turned out to be something I'd drawn for myself more than anything. I thought about the gray coat, which I'd worn every day of the trip, which I would press again when I got home and hang back on the door, not to save for the next special occasion, but because I'd decided I was going to wear it more. Gerald bought it for me for our anniversary. 32 years ago, I'd been saving it. I was done saving things. On the flight home window seat again, I watched Vancouver disappear below the clouds, the mountains last, then just gray and white, and the particular interior quiet of a plane moving east. The man in the seat next to me was maybe 75. He had a paperback thriller and reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. About an hour in, he noticed me looking out the window and said, "First time in Vancouver?" "No," I said, "but I saw it differently this trip." He nodded, the way people do when they understand more than you've said. I looked back at the clouds. I thought, 68 is not the end of something. I had believed, somewhere without meaning to believe it, that this birthday, this particular one, was about receiving, about being celebrated because time was thinning and someone ought to notice. I had flown to Vancouver to be received, but the trip had given me something else. Patricia and her Okanagan wine and her wood stove, Lily's purple portrait, the mountains coming in, the quiet of a hotel room I'd chosen for myself, the specific dignity of a woman eating soup alone at a window and deciding that she was in fact fine. The plane banked north over the Rockies. I could see the peaks sharp and white below the wing. I pressed my hand to the window. Cold glass. Mountains all the way to the horizon. I thought, I'm glad I came. Not because it had gone the way I'd planned. Not because the circle on the notepad had meant what I thought it would mean. But because I had learned something about the difference between being invited into someone else's life and building one of your own. And because 68, it turned out, was exactly old enough to know which one mattered more. When I got back to Thunder Bay, Ruth had left a small cake on my doorstep. Lemon, with white icing, and a note that said, "Happy belated, Beverly. Hope Vancouver was wonderful." I stood on my porch in the gray coat and held the cake and looked out at the street, the big maples all bare now, the first real cold of November settling in, and I thought, yes, some of it was. I went inside, put the kettle on, unrolled Lily's drawing and put it on the fridge. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, picked up the phone, and called Diane. "How was it?" she said. "Complicated," I said, "and good. Both things." "Those usually go together," she said. "They do," I said. "They really do."